Usually when we think about a job interview, there's this universal, completely unspoken expectation of performance.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
you put on the stiff, uncomfortable suit, you sit up perfectly straight in this strange chair, and you essentially hand over this highly polished, heavily edited resume.
Right, the curated version of yourself.
Exactly. You just sit there presenting this bullet-pointed narrative, and you're just hoping the interviewer buys it.
Because it's entirely an exercise in, emphasizing your flawless achievements and just quietly sweeping any gaps in your history right under the rug. I mean, we are just so conditioned to present the finished, invulnerable product.
It feels safe, or, well, at least familiar. But then, and this is where we're going today, you take that exact same mindset, that impulse to present a flawless resume, and you apply it to the realm of your relationship with the universe.
And you are in for a massive shock.
Yeah, a huge shock. Because the material we are diving into today argues that the divine is basically the one interviewer who takes that beautiful polished resume, drops it directly in the trash, looks right at you, and asks, who is actually sitting in front of me?
It forces an absolute paradigm shift. We spend our whole lives conditioned to perform, and the sources we are looking at today just dismantle that entirely.
Which brings us to the show. Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a highly custom-tailored exploration for you today, and our sources are pulling from this really fascinating collection of contemporary spiritual philosophy essays, some theological writing.
Really rich stuff.
Super rich. And our mission today is to use these texts to answer a question that, honestly, it sits beneath just about every prayer, every ritual, every spiritual tradition out there, which is, what does the divine actually want from you?
And we should probably set some ground rules right out of the gate for you, because what we're unpacking today is completely untethered from rigid doctrine or, like, dogma.
Right.
We are emphatically not exploring fear-based religion here. These essays frame our relationship with the divine as the natural movements of a universe that is, at its very core, fundamentally alive, loving, and truthful.
Okay, let's unpack this, because most of us really do treat spirituality like that rigid job interview. I mean, we mentally hand over our list of good deeds, our perfect attendance records, our carefully constructed moral achievements.
Yeah, we want credit for behaving well.
Exactly. We want the gold star.
Well, what's fascinating here is how these texts shift the entire concept of the divine away from that image of, a demanding sovereign on a throne or like a punishing parent who's just waiting to catch you breaking a rule.
Right, the guy with the clipboard in the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, the divine is defined as something far more intimate and structural. The specific phrase the text uses is, and I love this, the intelligence of life loving itself into coherence.
The intelligence of life loving itself into coherence. Wow. So we aren't talking about forced compliance here. It sounds more like a biological system, where all the individual cells finally align to keep the whole body healthy and functioning.
That biological lens is a really great way to look at it. Because if the divine is life loving itself into coherence, then the answer to what it wants from you is actually uncomplicated.
I feel a but coming.
Yeah, but, as the source text is very quick to point out, uncomplicated does not mean easy. It is highly demanding.
So if the universe doesn't want our polished resume of good behavior, what does it actually want? The essays lay out presence and authenticity as the absolute baseline, but they actually spend just as much time calling out what is not wanted.
Right. They're very clear on the negatives.
Yeah, like there is zero interest in performance, zero interest in having a spiritually correct posture, or just saying beautiful words over a hollow interior.
The requirement is literally just you actually being here, present in the body,
No.
present to the immediate moment. Because the text warns really heavily against hovering above your own life.
Oh, like watching it from a safe distance.
Exactly. Or living in this perpetual state of planning for a hypothetical future version of yourself.
Oh man, we all do that constantly. We tell ourselves, I'll be spiritual when I finally get my anxiety under control.
Yeah.
Or like, I'll be authentic when I lose 10 pounds and get that promotion, then I'll be ready.
Totally. But presence, according to the source, is not a passive state. It's not just floating in the ether. It is an act. In fact, they argue it is the fundamental mechanical act of existence.
How so? Like mechanically?
Well, the argument is that everything else you might want to do, love, creativity, service, devotion, literally cannot happen unless it originates from within genuine presence. You cannot connect to a system if you're not actually sitting at the terminal.
Which requires authenticity. Which means bringing your contradictions, your complete lack of understanding, and your unhealed wounds to the table. But And I actually have to stop and push back here for a second,
Sure, go for it.
because this feels deeply counterintuitive to how most of us were raised.
Mm.
Like, I was taught that humility means suppressing myself to be good.
Right, the idea of self-erasure.
Exactly. We are supposed to be quiet, accommodating, selfless. So if my internal compass says I should erase my desires to be a good person, why does this text frame that exact behavior as a refusal and a withholding from the divine? Doesn't that flip traditional humility completely on its head?
It completely flips it. It is a radical reframing of what it means to be humble. The text asserts that the suppression of the self basically creates a vacuum.
A vacuum.
Yeah, like the divine cannot work through a person who has vacated themselves in the name of goodness. Think about the mechanics of it. If the universe is a singular living intelligence, then you, the individual, you are essentially its sensory organ.
Oh, I see.
You are how it experiences this specific slice of reality. So if the sensory organ fakes its data just to look good, the whole organism is blinded.
Wait, so vacating yourself in the name of goodness is actually a form of sensory deprivation for the universe?
Exactly.
Wow, that means showing up with your flaws, your anger, your confusion. That isn't a failure. It is the exact raw material required for a genuine relationship with life. It's kind of like trying to build a house, right? You can't build it out of an idea of a brick.
No, you need actual bricks.
Right. Even if they are chipped or covered in dirt, you need the physical material.
And the divine wants the real version of you, the one who still struggles, who gets it wrong, who carries wounds that are, and this is a quote, still in the process of becoming wisdom.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
There's this brilliant line in the text that addresses this directly. It states, authenticity is not something you achieve. It is something you stop preventing.
Stop preventing. So that implies that authenticity is already your default state. You're just spending an enormous amount of energy building dams to hold it back.
You are constantly expending energy to curate the resume. Dropping the resume is what allows the natural state to actually flow.
Okay, so let's say you do that. Let's say you stop preventing your own authenticity, you drop the act, and you actually show up with all your messy, unpolished reality. A new problem immediately emerges for you. What are you supposed to do with who you are?
Right, the practical application.
Exactly. How do you interact with the world? And the source introduces this concept of how we use our gifts, and it shifts entirely away from guilt or moral obligation.
It describes every gift as a trust. But, and this is key, not a trust in the sense of a heavy burden you are forced to carry. The mechanical term it uses is correspondence.
Correspondence, like a
And
lock and a key.
yeah. The idea is that what was given to you was given because there is something in the actual fabric of this world that desperately needs exactly what you carry.
Right.
Your specific intelligence, your unique way of seeing things, your particular capacity for love. The text insists these are not accidents. They are specific architectural features of the universe. They are placed.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about it like an orchestra. If you are handed a tuba, you shouldn't spend your entire life apologizing for not being a flute.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. You shouldn't try to play flute sheet music on your tuba, and you definitely shouldn't feel guilty when it inevitably sounds terrible. The concept of correspondence means that the sheet music of the universe literally has a blank measure written specifically for the low, rumbling resonance of a tuba.
Exactly.
If you try to play a flute there, the frequency is wrong. The structural integrity of the song weakens.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy perfectly illustrates the stakes. Leaving your specific gifts unused is not a sign of quiet humility. The text actually calls it a kind of cosmic waste.
Cosmic waste. That's a strong phrase.
It is, because when you hide your specific capacity out of fear or just a desire to fit in, it is not just a personal private loss. The entire living system experiences a deficit.
The text even says that leaving your gifts unused feels to the divine like incompleteness, like a note held out of the song. And I want the listener to really think about how much pressure that removes from you.
I'm in pressure.
You don't have to use your gifts perfectly. You don't have to use them without fear. You just have to genuinely play your note because the universe is structurally missing you if you don't.
It changes the entire dynamic from punishment to longing. You know, the divine doesn't look down with anger and say, how dare you not use your talents? It just feels a gap where you're supposed to be.
Okay, so you're present. You drop the resume. You are playing your tuba, taking up the space you were designed for. If you're doing all of that, you are in motion. You are interacting with the world. And motion inevitably creates friction. You
Always.
cannot actively use your gifts in the real world without being transformed by the process.
Yeah.
And the texts are very clear that you have to be willing to be changed.
This is where the mechanics of a living system get highly demanding. The divine does not want a static devotee,
Yes.
meaning it has zero interest in your fixed ideas about who you are or your rigid beliefs about how the world works. It is entirely interested in your capacity to keep moving, to surrender the version of you that no longer fits, so that something truer can emerge.
The phrase they use is monuments to a former self. The divine doesn't want companions who have turned themselves into statues of who they used to be 5, 10, or 20 years ago.
Right.
Because the divine itself isn't static, it's constantly expanding, so you can't remain unchanged and still be in a genuine relationship with it.
Growth is an absolute inevitability here. But, growth means letting things die, which
Mm.
immediately triggers our survival instincts.
Natural.
So to ease that fear, the text offers this really profound distinction. It says, what dies in this process is not you. What dies is what was never fully you to begin with.
Wow. So you aren't losing yourself, you're losing the scaffolding you used to build yourself, which you just don't need anymore.
Exactly.
But wait, I'm actually stuck on something in this section. The essays bring up the concept of love without condition.
Yes, they do.
If my compass is pointed at unconditional love, and I'm supposed to remain open and authentic, how can I justify building a massive boundary to keep a toxic person out of my life?
Ah.
Doesn't building a wall inherently mean I've put a condition on my love? Doesn't that just make me a doormat?
This raises an important question, and it is honestly where so many spiritual frameworks just fall apart into toxic positivity.
Right.
But the text makes a razor-sharp mechanical distinction here. Love without condition is not love without discernment.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that.
Well, love without discernment means you have no boundaries. You just absorb all things regardless of harm like a sponge. And the text actively rejects that. It fully acknowledges that biological embodied existence involves being hurt, feeling betrayal, and sometimes needing to close off a perimeter for protection.
Okay.
What it asks for is unconditional love as a direction, not an immediate flawless state of proximity.
Like a compass heading.
A compass is the perfect way to understand it. It means orienting toward love as the larger truth, even when the immediate specific moment requires you to set a strict boundary, or to experience deep grief, or even create physical distance from someone who is causing harm.
So it's about the root intention.
Exactly. It means that beneath the anger or the necessary wall you just built, there is a root in you that still recognizes love as the fundamental ground of being.
So I can say, I recognize our shared humanity, but you absolutely cannot cross this line. Or even, I love the truth of who you are, but I need to be far, far away from your behavior right now.
Yes, orienting toward that ground, even if you do it slowly, even if you are incredibly angry while you do it, is the work. It's not demanding that you be a flawless saint who feels nothing but bliss when someone steps on your toes. It asks for your orientation, not your surrender to abuse.
See, that makes the concept incredibly practical. It takes unconditional love out of the clouds and just grounds it in the messy reality of human relationships. No, if we accept that living authentically requires constant, uncomfortable change and friction, it kind of begs the question, is this just chaotic suffering? Or is there a predictable physics to how this plays out? And the essays answer this by outlining the undeniable mechanics of how a living universe operates. They call them the inevitabilities.
And these aren't rules handed down by a dictator. They are just descriptions of how things naturally work. It's gravity or thermodynamics. Things that will happen not as punishments, but just as the natural consequence of a universe seeking wholeness.
Right. And the first inevitability is truth will surface.
Whatever has been buried, whether it's deep within your own psyche and old trauma, or out in the broader collective society, it will eventually find its way up. You can delay it, you can push it down for decades, but you cannot prevent it from surfacing.
Let's look at the mechanics of why that happens. Like, why can't a secret just stay buried forever?
Because a living system naturally seeks homeostasis. Think of it like a biological immune system. If you have a buried infection, a buried truth, the body cannot remain in a state of ease.
It has to react.
Exactly. The immune system, which in this case is the living universe, will inevitably generate a fever. It will create heat and friction to force that infection to the surface, so the body can actually heal and achieve wholeness. The text says what you can do is meet it with as much openness as you are able when it comes.
Basically, the fever is coming, so you might as well stop fighting the heat.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which naturally leads to the second inevitability, Growth will be required. Stagnation literally has a shelf life. The essays describe the comfortable contraction and the safe smallness.
Oh, we all intimately know the feeling of safe smallness. Staying in the job you outgrew 5 years ago or, maintaining a relationship that drains you simply because it is a known variable. But the physics of this system dictate that safe smallness will, at some point, become unbearable.
And not because the universe is punishing you for staying put, but because of the mechanical pressure of a growing seed. Like if you plant an oak tree in a tiny clay pot, eventually the roots are going to shatter the clay.
They have to.
You were not designed for stagnation, so the discomfort of staying cramped in that pot will eventually become vastly greater than the terrifying prospect of breaking the pot and growing.
When the pain of staying tight in the bud becomes greater than the pain it takes to blossom, the path becomes clear, even if the blooming itself is really difficult.
Man, that's powerful. The third inevitability is that love will find its way. And this is framed as the most fundamental physical law of the system. No matter how many times love has been refused or redirected or just buried under thick layers of cynicism, it always moves toward expression.
Think of it like water moving down a mountain. You can build dams, you can divert it, you can freeze it temporarily, but gravity insists that the water will eventually reach the ocean.
It's inevitable.
Unwillingness doesn't stop love, it only delays the current. The source asserts that the divine loves herself into manifestation through every single living thing. It is literally an unstoppable mechanical tide.
And the final inevitability, and this is the one that really hits hard, is what is not yours will fall away.
This connects right back to the very beginning, to the idea of the curated self and the job interview resume.
Yeah. All those identities we adopted just to survive childhood, the roles we wore purely to get approval from our peers, the political or religious beliefs we just inherited without ever actually choosing or examining them. The text says these will loosen, and then it adds two very honest words, often painfully.
Often painfully. Yeah, it fully acknowledges the friction of losing what you thought was your identity. Think about how much energy you spend every single day trying to maintain those roles.
It's exhausting.
It is. It requires a massive amount of psychological scaffolding to hold up a false self. When that scaffolding starts to collapse, it feels terrifying. It feels like you are losing a piece of yourself.
But the text reassures us that what remains after that painful collapse is actually sturdier. It is the actual unpolished brick we talked about earlier. By letting the false things fall away, you stop spending all your energy holding up the scaffolding, which finally makes you incredibly available for actual life.
And if we synthesize these four inevitabilities, truth surfacing like an immune response, growth shattering the small pot, love flowing like water, and the exhausting false self falling away, it paints a picture of a universe that is entirely collaborative.
It's not working against you.
No. The divine isn't doing this to you from a distance to test your resolve. It is doing this with you as a shared process of becoming.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? When we take all of these pieces, the demand for authentic presence, the structural requirement to use your specific tuba without apology, the willingness to shed your old self, and the acceptance of these cosmic physics, what's the final takeaway?
The core realization is that the universe is not a strict interviewer waiting to catch you failing. It does not require appeasement, groveling, or pristine, flawless resume. What it requires are simply the elements of any genuine, healthy working relationship: honesty, engagement, consistency, showing up as your real self at the terminal consistently.
And the texts conclude with a thought that directly addresses that deep-seated, quiet feeling of inadequacy most of us carry around. It says, she already knows you. She has always known you. What she is waiting for is not your perfection. She is waiting for you to stop hiding.
We spend so much time polishing this document, trying to prove we are worthy of the job of existing, worthy of being loved.
Yeah.
We build monuments to who we used to be, and we twist ourselves into knots trying to be the flute. All the while, the intelligence of life is just waiting for us to actually walk into the room and take our seat.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, building on that idea of the false self falling away. We talk about how the uncomfortable process of shedding old identities only destroys what was never fully yours to begin with. I want you to look at the parts of your life right now where you are fighting the absolute hardest. The places where you are exhausted to your bones, where the friction feels unbearable, where you are desperately trying to protect a specific image, a title, or a role. Ask yourself this. Could it be that your exhaustion isn't coming from failing to be yourself? Could it be that the intense pain is actually coming from the immense, impossible effort of holding on to a role that was never genuinely yours to begin with?
It is a question worth carrying with you into the friction of your week.
Drop the resume. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.